Rita Hayworth was sold to the world as Hollywood's ultimate fantasy, but behind every iconic pinup was a name. Margarita Cansino, painfully erased by studios willing to trade a girl's identity for profits and war morale. 5 million men received her image, but none saw the cost. The story you think you know hides a darker reality, and what they did to her changed Hollywood forever. Columbia Pictures didn't just discover Rita Hayworth. They invented her, piece by piece, with the tools of a modern branding machine. In 1937, a new contract bound Margarita Cansino to the studio, but the deal extended far beyond film roles. Harry Cohn, the studio chief, demanded a transformation. Her Spanish surname was replaced with her mother's, and the press was instructed to call her Rita Hayworth from that moment on. Publicists distributed carefully worded press kits that omitted any mention of her father's Tijuana nightclubs or her early life as a child performer. Studio photographers staged endless sessions, producing images that would define her as the American love goddess. Those glamour shots showed a lighter complexion, a higher hairline, and a cascade of red hair, details engineered to erase her heritage and fit her into Hollywood's preferred mold. Internal memos outlined which biographical details to highlight and which to bury, ensuring the only story reaching the public was one of effortless beauty and charm. By 1941, Life magazine splashed her image across its cover, cementing the fantasy. Behind the scenes, every detail was managed: diets, diction lessons, even the angle of her smile in publicity stills. The result was a persona so seamless that the real woman behind it vanished from view, replaced by a trademarked ideal. The machinery of image-making didn't just shape public perception, it dictated what Rita Hayworth was allowed to be. Between 1943 and 1945, the War Department launched a morale campaign that made Rita Hayworth's image nearly impossible to escape. Her pinup photo, first featured as a centerfold in the July 1944 issue of Yank magazine, became the most requested image among American servicemen. In barracks from Normandy to the South Pacific, her likeness hung beside bunks and inside lockers, a reminder of home and a symbol of what soldiers believed they were fighting for. Official shipment records from the period estimate that millions of prints, and some sources say over 5 million, were distributed through military channels and mass circulation magazines. Yank alone reached a weekly audience of more than 2 million, with Hayworth's photo reprinted so often that supplies struggled to meet demand. Letters flooded in from soldiers asking for extra copies, and the Army Special Services Division prioritized her image in morale kits sent overseas. Her face appeared not just in magazines, but on bomber noses, on mess hall walls, and even as Lucky Charms tucked into helmets. The sheer scale of this blitz transformed her from a Hollywood star into a global fantasy, her identity flattened into a single smiling pose. For millions, Rita Hayworth was not a person. They knew only the photograph, the perfect illusion mailed to the front lines by the thousands every week. Christmas night, 1932. The Caliente Club in Tijuana was packed with gamblers, tourists, and cigarette smoke. On stage, a 12-year-old girl danced alongside her father, her feet moving with practiced precision. Margarita Carmen Cansino had been performing for years by then, but this was no school recital. 4 shows every night, 7 days a week, with routines that demanded the stamina and poise of a seasoned adult. Caliente Club, her father, Eduardo Cansino, a celebrated Spanish dancer, was both her mentor and her boss. He drove her through hours of rehearsals, correcting every misstep, pushing her to match his standards. Rehearsal notebooks from those years list endless drills: bolero, tango, flamenco, each step marked and repeated until exhaustion. Mentor Eduardo's ambitions for their act left no space for childhood. Margarita's school attendance slipped as the family moved between Los Angeles and the border clubs. California law barred minors from dancing in nightclubs, but across the border there were no questions. The club circuit in Tijuana offered steady work, and Eduardo made sure his daughter was always ready, always perfect. Audiences saw a dazzling young performer. Offstage, the toll was hidden, blisters and fatigue, and a growing sense that her life was not her own. Perfect. The discipline of those years shaped everything that followed. Margarita learned to obey, to endure, and to perform on command. The lessons of the Caliente Club would echo through every transformation imposed on her body and identity. In the glare of the spotlight, the boundaries between labor and childhood disappeared, replaced by the demands of a father's ambition and a world eager for the next sensation. Disappeared. By early 1937, Margarita Cansino's transformation was no longer just stage makeup or a new surname. Columbia Pictures arranged a schedule of cosmetic procedures designed to erase the last traces of her Spanish ancestry from her appearance. The most invasive was electrolysis, a process that used electrical currents to remove hair and reshape her hairline. Salon ledgers from that year logged 36 separate appointments, each session lasting hours, each one more painful than the last. The goal was to raise her naturally low, rounded hairline, considered too ethnic for the era's leading ladies. Technicians worked methodically, burning away follicles along her forehead, week after week, until the shape matched the studio's blueprint. The changes did not stop there. Her skin was lightened with bleaching creams. Her hair, once deep brown, was stripped and dyed a coppery red. Dietitians and personal trainers were contracted to regulate her weight and posture. Even her voice was altered, with diction coaches drilling her to lose any trace of a Spanish accent. Behind closed doors, the procedures left her scalp raw and her nerves frayed. Yet the studio's legal team pressed forward. On April 13, 1937, a Los Angeles court approved her official name change to Rita Hayworth, severing the last legal tie to her birth identity. From that moment, every contract, every film credit, every magazine cover bore the new name. The transformation was total, painful, permanent, and by design, invisible to the audience. What the world saw as effortless glamour was in truth the result of a relentless campaign to turn a young woman's body into a blank canvas for fantasy. On September 7, 1943, Rita Hayworth and Orson Welles slipped into a Santa Monica courthouse for a civil wedding, keeping even close friends and the studio in the dark. The event was so secret that Columbia Pictures scrambled to cancel a planned photo call, worried about the impact on Rita's carefully managed image. Hollywood's gossip columns erupted, unable to reconcile the private woman with the public fantasy. Orson Welles later spoke about their marriage with a candor that stunned the industry. "Men go to bed with Gilda, but wake up with me." In that single sentence, the illusion shattered. The world was forced to confront the difference between the woman they adored on screen and the person who lived behind the mask. In the 1950s, Rita Hayworth's name became a fixture in tabloids, but not for her films. On a December night in 1953, Los Angeles police arrested her after a public argument, and the story splashed across the next day's papers. 2 years later, Confidential magazine ran a cover story accusing her of drunken outbursts and failed romances. Editors seized every opportunity to frame her as unstable, with headlines like "Hayworth's temper explodes again" and "Studio suspends star for defiance," the latter referring to Columbia's official suspension notice in 1956. Each incident was treated as proof of a fading star who could not control herself. The press turned her personal struggles into public spectacle, punishing her for failing to fit the fantasy Hollywood had created. In 1981, doctors finally diagnosed Rita Hayworth with Alzheimer's disease. The revelation explained years of confusion and public misunderstanding. Her daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, described moments when Rita could no longer recognize the films that made her famous. Caregivers recalled her watching Gilda in silence, unable to remember the role or the choreography she once mastered. A neurologist reviewing her case pointed out that symptoms had been mistaken for drinking and scandal. Film scholars revisited her performances, noting how the 17-beat timing of the glove strip in Gilda was not luck. It was the mark of a precise, intelligent artist working through pain the world never saw. Today, Hollywood still trades in illusion, often at the expense of truth and personhood. Rita Hayworth's story forces us to ask, who gets erased so others can dream? The cost of fantasy remains real, and its victims are rarely those we remember. Share your thoughts on her legacy below.
Gilda, the love goddess Rita Hayworth. Her name sparkles with Hollywood glamour and timeless beauty. But behind that dazzling smile lies a shocking story of exploitation, heartbreak, and a battle against a cruel disease. From seedy Tijuana nightclubs to opulent European palaces, and ultimately to the merciless streets of Los Angeles, we'll strip away the glittering facade. Brace yourself for Rita Hayworth's jaw-dropping true story. It's wilder than any Hollywood script. Early life and career beginnings. Margarita Carmen Cansino was born on October 17, 1918, in Brooklyn, New York. Her father, Eduardo Cansino, was a Spanish dancer, and her mother, Volga Hayworth, was an American showgirl. From a young age, she was immersed in the world of dance, performing with her father in nightclubs. Eduardo's dream was for his daughter to become a professional dancer, and he trained her rigorously. At just 12 years old, she joined her father in a dance act called the Dancing Cansinos. The duo performed in clubs and on stage, impressing audiences with their flamenco routines. By the mid-1930s, Hollywood had taken notice of her talent. In 1935, she signed a contract with Fox Film Corporation, marking the beginning of her journey in the film industry. Initially, she appeared in small roles and dance sequences. Her first film was Dante's Inferno, 1935, where she played a dancer. Despite her limited screen time, her beauty and talent caught the attention of filmmakers. During this period, studio executives suggested a name change to make her more marketable. Thus, Margarita Carmen Cansino became Rita Hayworth, adopting her mother's maiden name. The transformation was not just in name. To fit the Hollywood image, she underwent painful electrolysis to raise her hairline and dyed her naturally dark hair to auburn. These changes were intended to give her a more American look. Her persistence paid off when she landed a role in Only Angels Have Wings, 1939, directed by Howard Hawks. This film was a turning point, showcasing her acting skills and establishing her as a rising star. Rise to stardom. With a new name and a transformed look, Rita Hayworth's career began to soar in the early 1940s. Her role in Only Angels Have Wings, 1939, caught the attention of both audiences and critics. This film was a critical and commercial success, providing her with more significant opportunities in Hollywood. In 1941, she starred in The Strawberry Blonde alongside James Cagney and Olivia de Havilland. The film was a hit, and her performance was praised for its charm and wit. The same year, she appeared in Blood and Sand with Tyrone Power, a film that further cemented her status as a major star. Her role as the seductive Donna Sol was a breakout performance, demonstrating her dramatic range and solidifying her reputation in Hollywood. Her star power continued to rise, and by the mid-1940s, she had become one of Hollywood's most popular actresses. Her famous pinup photo, taken in 1941, became one of the most popular images among American troops during the war. In 1946, she starred in Gilda, a film that would define her career. Her portrayal of the titular character was both alluring and complex, and the scene where she performs Put the Blame on Mame became legendary. The role showcased her as a sultry, sophisticated actress and cemented her status as a Hollywood icon. Despite personal challenges, her career continued to flourish. She starred in The Lady from Shanghai, 1947, directed by Orson Welles. The film was controversial and ahead of its time, featuring her with a striking blonde hairstyle. Although the film was not a commercial success, it has since become a cult classic, admired for its innovative cinematography and complex narrative. By the late 1940s, she was one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood. Her films were box office hits, and she had become a cultural icon. However, The pressure to maintain her image and the constant media attention began to take a toll. Wartime efforts and patriotic duties. During World War II, Rita Hayworth, like many Hollywood stars, actively participated in the war effort. This period marked a significant phase in her life and career, distinct from her rise to stardom and later struggles. In 1941, as the United States entered the war, Hayworth began her involvement with the Hollywood Canteen, a club offering food, dancing, and entertainment for servicemen, usually on their way overseas. She volunteered regularly, serving food and dancing with soldiers, boosting morale among the troops. Hayworth also participated in war bond drives. In 1942, she embarked on a tour of several cities, including Chicago, Minneapolis, and Detroit, to promote the sale of war bonds. Her appearances drew large crowds and significantly increased bond sales. During one event in Los Angeles, she auctioned off one of her favorite evening gowns, raising a substantial sum for the war effort. In 1944, Hayworth joined the Hollywood Victory Committee and began participating in USO, United Service Organizations, tours. She traveled to various military bases across the United States, performing for troops and boosting morale. Her shows typically included dance performances and meet-and-greet sessions with servicemen. During this period, Hayworth continued her film career, appearing in movies that provided escapism for war-weary audiences. In You Were Never Lovelier, 1942, she starred opposite Fred Astaire in a romantic comedy. Astaire later praised her as his favorite dance partner, a testament to her incredible talent and dedication. Her performance in Cover Girl, 1944, while not directly about the war, resonated with audiences' dreams of success during difficult times. In 1945, as the war was coming to an end, Hayworth participated in several events celebrating returning troops. She appeared at parades and homecoming celebrations, continuing her role in boosting national morale. Throughout the war years, Hayworth maintained a grueling schedule, balancing her film career with her war effort activities. She often worked 6-day weeks, filming during the day and performing at the Hollywood Canteen or attending bond drives in the evenings. This period also saw changes in Hayworth's personal life. In 1943, she married Orson Welles, and their daughter Rebecca was born in 1944. Balancing her new family life with her career and war effort commitments presented additional challenges. The war years were a time of intense activity and patriotic duty for Hayworth, showcasing her dedication to her country alongside her rising stardom in Hollywood. Struggles behind the glamour. Despite the glittering success, Rita Hayworth's life was fraught with personal and professional struggles. The demands of maintaining her Hollywood image were relentless. She often felt trapped by the glamorous persona created for her, yearning to be seen as a serious actress rather than just a sex symbol. Hayworth's personal life was marked by a series of tumultuous relationships. Her marriage to Orson Welles, which began in 1943, was her second. Although their union was filled with passion, it was also plagued by infidelity and mutual misunderstandings. Welles's dedication to his work often left Hayworth feeling neglected. They divorced in 1947, with Hayworth citing Welles's lack of commitment to the family. In 1949, she married Prince Ali Khan, son of the Aga Khan III, becoming the first Hollywood actress to marry into royalty. The marriage was initially a fairy tale, with lavish parties and a life of luxury. They had a daughter, Princess Yasmin Aga Khan, in 1949. However, the fairy tale soon turned sour. Ali Khan's constant infidelity and the pressures of royal life were overwhelming. They separated in 1951 and divorced in 1953. Hayworth's career also faced challenges. Despite her success, she struggled with being typecast in roles that emphasized her beauty over her acting abilities. Studio head Harry Cohn was notoriously controlling, dictating every aspect of her career and personal life. Cohn's manipulation extended to her finances and professional decisions, leaving her with little control over her destiny. The constant scrutiny and pressure began to take a toll on her mental health. She started drinking heavily, which affected her professional life. Her performance in The Loves of Carmen, 1948, was praised, but behind the scenes, she was battling personal demons. The relentless pace of Hollywood and the expectations placed upon her as a star exacerbated her struggles. Her marriage to singer Dick Haymes in 1953 further complicated her life. Haymes was battling financial troubles and career decline. which only added to Hayworth's stress. Their tumultuous relationship was marred by public altercations and legal issues. Hayworth's attempts to maintain her career while dealing with a failing marriage and personal issues were increasingly difficult. Career challenges and triumphs. The 1950s marked a period of significant upheaval in Rita Hayworth's career. Despite her status as a top Hollywood star, she faced numerous challenges that tested her resilience and determination. The decline of the studio system and changing tastes in the film industry affected her career trajectory. In the early 1950s, Hayworth took a break from Hollywood after her marriage to Prince Ali Khan. The hiatus impacted her career, causing her to lose momentum in a rapidly evolving industry. Upon her return, she struggled to reclaim her former glory. Her first film after the break, Affair in Trinidad, 1952, was intended to capitalize on the success of Gilda, reuniting her with co-star Glenn Ford. While the film performed well at the box office, it failed to recapture the magic of her earlier work. Despite the setbacks, Hayworth continued to work diligently. She starred in Salome, 1953, a biblical epic that showcased her dramatic abilities. The film was a commercial success but received mixed reviews from critics. Her performance was praised, yet she was often overshadowed by the larger-than-life production. In 1957, she attempted a significant comeback with the musical Pal Joey, co-starring Frank Sinatra and Kim Novak. The film was well received, and her performance as the wealthy widow Vera Simpson was lauded. Pal Joey proved that Hayworth still had the talent and charisma to captivate audiences, even as newer stars emerged. Throughout the 1950s, she faced typecasting issues, often being offered roles that emphasized her beauty rather than her acting skills. She sought more substantial parts that would allow her to showcase her range as an actress. In Separate Tables, 1958, she took on a more complex role, portraying a troubled woman in a drama about the residents of a British seaside hotel. The film was a critical success, earning several Academy Award nominations. Her performance was a reminder of her ability to tackle challenging roles with depth and nuance. Despite these triumphs, her career was marred by financial mismanagement and personal struggles. Studio head Harry Cohn's controlling influence extended beyond her professional life, impacting her finances and decisions. After Cohn's death in 1958, she faced numerous legal battles over her contracts and earnings, further complicating her career. In the early 1960s, Hayworth continued to work, though less frequently. She appeared in The Story on Page 1, 1959, directed by Clifford Odets, and The Happy Thieves, 1961, with Rex Harrison. These films, while not as successful as her earlier work, demonstrated her ongoing commitment to her craft. In 1964, she took on a supporting role in Circus World, alongside John Wayne and Claudia Cardinal. The film, while not critically acclaimed, provided Hayworth with a substantial part and showcased her ability to adapt to changing industry dynamics. Her last major film was The Wrath of God, 1972, a Western thriller where she played a supporting role alongside Robert Mitchum. This film marked the end of her nearly 4-decade-long career in Hollywood, a testament to her enduring appeal and talent. Throughout her career, Hayworth appeared in over 60 films, spanning various genres from musicals and romantic comedies to film noir and dramas. Her versatility as an actress, often overshadowed by her image as a glamour icon, was evident in the range of roles she took on over the years. Health struggles. The 1960s brought a new and devastating challenge to Rita Hayworth's life. Her health began to decline in ways that puzzled doctors and those close to her. Initially, the symptoms were subtle. She experienced mood swings, memory lapses, and an overall decline in cognitive abilities. Friends and family attributed these changes to the stress of her career and personal life, but the reality was far more severe. In the early 1960s, she continued to work, although the quality and frequency of her roles diminished. She appeared in The Happy Thieves, 1961, and Circus World, 1964, alongside John Wayne. Despite her efforts, it was clear that something was wrong. She often forgot her lines and struggled to maintain her previous level of performance. The public and the press speculated about the reasons behind her erratic behavior, with many attributing it to her well-documented struggles with alcoholism. By the late 1960s, her condition had worsened significantly. She was frequently disoriented and had difficulty recognizing people she had known for years. Her inability to perform effectively led to fewer job offers, and she withdrew from the public eye. In a desperate attempt to regain control of her life and career, she sought medical advice, but the true nature of her illness remained undiagnosed. In the early 1970s, her daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, began to take a more active role in her care. Yasmin noticed that her mother's condition was deteriorating rapidly. In 1976, during a highly publicized appearance at a New York gala, she appeared confused and disoriented. This event marked a turning point as it became clear to the world that Hayworth was suffering from more than just the effects of aging or alcohol abuse. It wasn't until 1980 that she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. At the time, Alzheimer's was not well understood, and there were few treatments available. The diagnosis provided some clarity, but it also marked the beginning of a long and painful decline. Her condition continued to worsen, and she required constant care. Yasmin, along with other family members, dedicated themselves to ensuring she received the best possible care. Financial hardships. Rita Hayworth's life was not only marred by health issues, but also significant financial hardships. Despite being one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, she faced numerous financial difficulties throughout her life, many of which stemmed from mismanagement and exploitation by those she trusted. During her peak years, Hayworth earned substantial amounts of money, but much of it was squandered due to poor financial decisions and the manipulative control of people around her. Her first husband, Edward Judson, who was also her manager, had taken significant portions of her earnings. He controlled her finances, making investments that did not always benefit her. After their divorce in 1942, she was left to rebuild her financial stability on her own. The financial strain continued with her subsequent marriages. Prince Ali Khan provided a lavish lifestyle during their marriage, but after their divorce in 1953, Hayworth received little financial support. Her fourth husband, Dick Haymes, compounded her financial woes. Haymes was already struggling with his own career decline and substantial debts. Marrying him led to further financial instability. He was embroiled in legal battles over unpaid debts, and as his wife, Hayworth, was dragged into these issues, which further strained her finances. In the late 1950s, after the death of Columbia Pictures studio head Harry Cohn, who had been a controlling figure in her career, Hayworth faced numerous legal battles over her contracts and earnings. Cohn had exerted significant control over her finances and career decisions, often to her detriment. Without his influence, she had to navigate the complexities of Hollywood contracts and financial management on her own, leading to more challenges. Her financial situation deteriorated further as her career declined. The roles she was offered paid significantly less, and her increasing health issues made it difficult to work consistently. By the 1960s and 1970s, her income had dwindled. Despite the occasional film role or public appearance, she struggled to maintain her previous standard of living. In 1972, she sued her former manager and lawyer, accusing them of mismanaging her finances and failing to provide her with accurate information about her earnings. The lawsuit highlighted the extent of her financial exploitation and the difficulties she faced in managing her wealth. The case was settled out of court, but it did little to alleviate her financial troubles. As her health declined, the cost of medical care and support increased. Her daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, stepped in to help manage her affairs and provide the necessary care. Yasmin's involvement brought some stability, but the financial burden of caring for someone with Alzheimer's disease was substantial. Later years. As Rita Hayworth's health continued to decline due to Alzheimer's disease, her later years were marked by increasing isolation and a withdrawal from public life. The vibrant, glamorous star who once captivated audiences now faced the harsh realities of a debilitating illness. By the early 1970s, it was evident that her cognitive abilities were deteriorating rapidly. Despite occasional public appearances, her behavior became increasingly erratic and unpredictable. This led to misunderstandings and speculations about her condition. Many attributed her symptoms to alcoholism, unaware of the underlying cause. Her daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, played a crucial role in providing care and support during these challenging times. Yasmin, recognizing the severity of her mother's condition, took significant steps to ensure she received appropriate medical care. She moved Hayworth to New York, where she could be closer and manage her care more effectively. This period was particularly difficult as the former Hollywood star struggled with the loss of independence and the progressive decline in her mental faculties. In the mid-1970s, Hayworth's public appearances became rare. Her final film, The Wrath of God, 1972, was a Western in which she played a small role. By this time, her ability to memorize lines and perform had significantly diminished. The film marked the end of her illustrious career, and she quietly retired from acting. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Hayworth lived a quiet life, surrounded by close family and caregivers. Yasmin's dedication to her mother's well-being ensured that Hayworth received the best possible care. Despite the challenges, there were moments of peace and comfort. Hayworth's family and friends cherished these times, providing her with love and support. By the early 1980s, her condition had severely progressed. She required constant care and supervision. The once glamorous star, known for her elegance and beauty, now battled the relentless advance of Alzheimer's. The disease took a heavy toll, but her family remained by her side, ensuring she was never alone. Death and immediate aftermath. Rita Hayworth passed away on May 14, 1987, in her New York City apartment. She was 68 years old. The official cause of death was complications from Alzheimer's disease, a condition she had battled for nearly 2 decades. The news of her death was widely reported in the media. Her daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, made a public statement expressing gratitude for the support they had received during Hayworth's illness. Hayworth's funeral was a private affair, held at the Church of the Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills on May 18, 1987. It was attended by close family and a select group of friends from the entertainment industry. The service was described as simple and dignified, reflecting Hayworth's wishes. Big budget action, tiny safety margins, and one mistake that changes everything. When a film set fails, it only takes a few seconds for a routine shot to turn into the worst day a crew will ever face.
She didn't make it.
Sky Wayman stunt dive disaster. The 2nd of August, 1920. A crowd lines an oil field outside Los Angeles, waiting to watch a stunt for a new Fox movie. At the center of it all is Armour Locklear, a former World War I pilot who turned flying into a show. He climbs into the cockpit with co-pilot Milton Skeets Elliott. The film is called The Skywayman. The job today is simple on paper, deadly in practice. Fly low over oil derricks at night, roll the plane, then pull out in front of the cameras. To make the shot visible, the crew sets up huge arc lights around the field. The plan is clear. The lights will stay on as the plane comes in, then shut off as soon as Locklear starts his dive. Without the glare, his eyes can adjust to the dark ground and he can judge his height. Engines start. The camera rolls. The plane climbs into the black sky. Locklear lines up the run and heads toward the bright pool of light over the derricks. People on the ground watch, excited. This is why they hired him. He is known for wing walking, barnstorming, wild dives. He starts the maneuver. The aircraft banks and begins to drop. At this moment, someone should cut the lights. They stay on. From the cockpit, the world turns into a white wall. The powerful lamps wash out any detail on the ground. With no horizon and no shadows, the pilot cannot tell how low he is. There is no real chance to reset. The dive continues, faster and faster. Witnesses hear the engine roaring, then see the plane vanish into the glare. A second later, there is a crash and a burst of flame from the oil field. The stunt is over. Locklear and Elliott die on impact. Fire crews move in. The wreck burns among the derricks. Studio heads now have a hard choice: shut the film down or use what they just recorded. Such men are dangerous collision. The 2nd of January, 1930. 2 camera planes lift off from a field near Santa Monica Bay. The crew is shooting aerial scenes for a Fox picture called Such Men Are Dangerous. The job today is to capture a parachute sequence from the air. The setup uses 2 Stinson Detroiter planes flying close together. One is the camera ship, and the other is part of the scene. Director Kenneth Hawks is on board one of them. He is only 31, already building a name in Hollywood. Cinematographer Conrad Wells is also in the group, along with several camera operators and pilots who have flown dozens of tight formations in the past. The crew checks their gear, secures the cameras, and gets ready for a routine pass over the ocean. The planes head out toward the open water. The weather is clear, smooth air, good visibility, and no reported issues. The pilots position the aircraft side by side, adjusting their distance so the cameras can frame the planned shot. Everything seems normal. The team inside each plane stays focused on timing and angles, calling out movements over the noise. Witnesses on a nearby boat later report what happens next. The two planes drift closer, just enough for a wingtip to touch. There is no way to separate at that point. The aircraft lock together and spin. Both structures break almost instantly. One catches fire as it drops. The other falls straight into the water. The men on board do not have time to react. The crash creates a plume of smoke and debris over the bay. Search boats race in. Only a few pieces of the wreckage float to the surface. 10 crew members lose their lives. Hawks and Wells are among them. Only half of the bodies are recovered. The rest sink with the aircraft into the cold water. News spreads fast through the studios. Fox sends teams to help with recovery and to piece together what led to the collision. Flight of the Phoenix crash. The desert air is still and bright when the Phoenix P-1 lines up for another pass. The cameras wait on the ground. The film is The Flight of the Phoenix, a survival story about a plane crash in the Sahara. The real danger is in Arizona, where the crew is staging low-level flights over rough sand. At the controls is Paul Mantz, one of the most famous stunt pilots in Hollywood. He has flown in dozens of movies and air races. He co-owns Tallman's Aviation, the company that built this odd-looking aircraft for the film. The Phoenix P-1 is a hybrid machine made from parts of several planes, designed to look like a handmade rescue craft. On the 8th of July, 1965, Mantz and stuntman Bobby Rose prepare for another shot. The call is for a low flyby that skims the desert floor, then lifts away in front of the cameras. They have already done one take. The director wants a second run, a little closer to the ground, to make the crash story feel more real. Mantz takes off and circles back toward the set. The plane comes in fast over the sand. At first, it looks smooth. Then, the unusual design shows its limits. The long belly and stiff structure leave very little room for error. As the Phoenix P-1 drops lower, it meets a small rise in the desert that the crew did not fully judge from the ground. The underside of the aircraft hits the bump. The impact tears the fuselage behind the cockpit. The nose section breaks away. The plane folds and slams into the sand. The cameras capture fragments of the fall before dust covers the frame. Rescue teams reach the wreck within minutes. Mantz dies from his injuries at the scene. Rose survives but is badly hurt. The loss shocks the stunt community. A federal report later notes that alcohol was present in Mantz's system and that the custom plane had design limits that made low-level work more risky than planned. Production cannot stop. The remaining flying shots are staged with safer setups, and more work shifts to model work on a soundstage. The crew finishes the flight of the Phoenix with miniatures and footage shot before the crash, then moves on to the next set. Twilight Zone helicopter crash. Helicopter rotors beat the night air over a fake Vietnam village outside Los Angeles. The set is built at Indian Dunes, an old ranch and testing ground that studios use for action scenes. On this night in July 1982, the crew was filming a sequence for Twilight Zone, the movie. Actor Vic Morrow stands in a shallow river holding two children. Micah Din Lei is 6 years old. Renee Shin Yi Chen is only 7. In the script, his character is a man pulled out of time and dropped into a war zone, trying to carry children to safety, while a helicopter chases them. The director wants chaos on screen. Explosives are wired along the banks to mimic artillery. A Bell Huey helicopter will hover low over the scene while cameras capture the panic in close shots. The plan calls for the chopper to move forward and rise as the blasts go off behind it. The crew runs through queues. Special effects teams watch their boards. The pilot reviews his path. Morrow and the children rehearse their run through the water. They are close to the hovering aircraft, but the shot needs that sense of danger to match the storyboards. When the cameras roll, everything happens in seconds. Morrow wades through the river with a child under each arm. The helicopter moves in behind them, flying low with its tail boom near the line of charges. The first explosions detonate on cue. Then a blast rises higher than planned and hits the rotor area. Witnesses see the helicopter shudder. The tail rotor separates. With that control surface gone, the pilot cannot keep the craft steady. The machine yaws, drops, and spins toward the river. The helicopter slams into the shallow water where the actors are running. The impact kills Morrow, Lei, and Chen instantly. Several people on board the aircraft are also injured. Emergency crews flood the set. Police and regulators arrive within hours. Rambo Waterfall. Set death. Water crashes over slick rock at a remote waterfall in Mexico. The crew for Rambo First Blood Part 2 is setting up another big blast. On screen, it'll look like pure chaos. Off-screen, it is a careful mix of explosives, cameras, and safety checks. Clifford P. Wenger Jr. works in special effects. His job is to place charges, time the blasts, and then make sure nothing keeps burning near the stunt area. He is not a star, but the film depends on people like him. They are the ones who make the war scenes look real. The call sheet for the day includes a shot with an explosion near the falls. Stunt teams and camera operators take their marks. Wenger and his crew set their charges on the rocks and in the water. They double-check cables and connections. Once everything is ready, the assistant director calls for the take. The blast goes off. The roar covers the sound of the falls for a moment. Spray and smoke rush across the frame. The cameras capture the hit, then cut. When the dust clears, the team has to make sure the area is safe. That means walking back into the same zone they just blew up. Wenger moves toward the top of the waterfall to inspect for small fires and loose gear. The rock is wet from constant mist. It is uneven and close to the drop. Crew members nearby later say there was no big stunt at that instant. It is just a routine check that follows every effect. He loses his footing on the slick surface. There is no guardrail and no net. He slips and falls from the waterfall into the pool below. Rescue efforts start at once, but he does not survive. Top Gun aerial camera loss. Art Scholl's name appears at the end of Top Gun in a simple card that reads like a thank you. The story behind that line starts long before the film hits theaters. Scholl is already famous in aviation circles. He is an aerobatic pilot, a flight instructor, and an aerial cameraman. Paramount hires him to capture real flight footage for Top Gun. The production needs shots that show what it feels like inside a spinning aircraft. Jet fighters are not ideal for that work. The team turns to Scholl and his Pitts S-2 biplane. He knows how to fly complex maneuvers with cameras strapped to the plane. On the 16th of September, 1985, he takes off from a field near the Southern California coast. The task is clear: perform a flat spin while the cameras roll, then recover. The footage will help the editors create sequences of jets in trouble. Scholl climbs to altitude, then begins the maneuver over the ocean. A flat spin means the plane rotates while dropping, with the nose high and the tail low. He has done similar moves many times. This time, something is off. Observers see the airplane spinning, but they do not see a recovery. Radio traffic captures his last words. He says, "I have a problem here." Moments later, the Pitts continues downward and disappears into the water. There is no sign of a pullout. Rescue aircraft and boats search the area. They find a fuel slick but no wreckage. Scholl's body is never recovered. Investigators cannot perform a full exam of the plane, so the exact cause stays unclear. Possible reasons include a shift in weight from the cameras, a control issue, or simple lack of altitude. Filming goes on, but the tone on set changes. The production team decides to dedicate the movie to Art Scholl in the final credits. Brandon Lee, prop tragedy. The warehouse set in Wilmington, North Carolina, looks like any other grim movie location. brick walls, broken furniture, squib packs in boxes. The crew on The Crow is racing the clock. The shoot has been long, the budget is tight, and the schedule has been hit by earlier delays. The date is the 31st of March, 1993. Brandon Lee is the lead. He is 28, and this film is supposed to make him a major star. The story calls for a scene where his character walks into an apartment and gets shot by a group of criminals. It is a standard gun scene on paper, blank rounds, careful marks, rehearsed moves. The weapon is a .44 caliber revolver. Earlier in the production, the crew used real cartridges to get close-up shots of the cylinder. To save money, they pulled the powder and primers and put the cases back in. One bullet tip stayed lodged in the barrel. On the day of the fatal scene, the effects team loaded blanks into the same gun without checking the barrel again. For the shot, an actor stands a short distance away and aims at Lee. Cameras roll. The gun fires once. A blank charge sends the stuck bullet tip out of the barrel with the force of a live round. The impact hits Lee in the abdomen. People on set first think he is still acting. Second stretch. He does not get up. The crew realizes something is wrong and calls for medics. He is rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. Doctors work for hours. He dies that night from the injury. Police and safety officials investigate the mistakes that lined up. Reports later show basic rules were broken. The production did not have a firearms expert in full control of the weapon at every step. The barrel was not inspected before loading blanks. Live components had been used on a set that was supposed to rely only on safe rounds. The Crow is almost finished. Producers decide to complete the movie using body doubles and visual tricks. Expendables Reservoir Explosion. The Ognianovo Reservoir in Bulgaria is quiet before the crew arrives. It is a wide stretch of water with hills around it, far from city streets. The location team for The Expendables 2 turns it into a war zone for a single-action set piece. Second unit handles this part of the shoot. Their job is to get fast-moving scenes with boats, fire, and debris. Stunt performers are used instead of main cast. Among them is Kun Lu, a young performer from China, and fellow stuntman Nuo Sunday. They are assigned to a rubber boat rigged for a blast. The stunt breakdown looks simple on paper. A boat speeds across the reservoir, charges in and around it explode. Cameras on other boats and on the shore capture the fireball and spray. Safety boats wait nearby in case anyone goes into the water. On the day of the stunt, the crew loads explosives into the boat and around the playing area. Special effects staff check wiring and timing. Stunt coordinators talk through the moves with Lou and Sunday. Everyone has to hit marks because the blast cannot be repeated in exactly the same way. When the cameras roll, the boat moves into position. The countdown starts. The explosion that follows is larger than anyone expects. Witnesses later describe a violent blast that tears the boat apart. The force travels through the hull instead of mostly up and out. Rescue boats move in at once. Liu is critically hurt. Sun is also injured. Medics on site work on both men, then send them to a hospital in Sofia. Kun Lu does not survive his injuries. News outlets in Bulgaria and China later confirm his death and his role on the film. Midnight Rider Train Strike. A narrow railroad bridge stretches over the Altamaha River near Doctortown, Georgia. On the 20th of February, 2014, a small film crew walks out onto the tracks with a metal hospital bed and some props. The movie is Midnight Rider, a biopic about musician Greg Allman. The bridge is active freight track. Trains still use it. The production does not have final permission from CSX, the rail company that controls the line. Even so, the crew sets up the shot. The plan is to film actor William Hurt lying on the bed while a dream sequence plays out around him. Space on the bridge is tight. There is a river below and little room on either side of the rails. Workers carry the heavy bed onto the trestle and arrange it over the ties. Cameras point down the track. A small group stands nearby with equipment. Among them is camera assistant Sarah Jones, 27 years old. The director calls for rehearsal. The crew is told that if a train appears, they will have enough time to clear the set. That promise turns out to be wrong. During one of the setups, a freight train rounds the bend at speed. There is no extended warning and no signal from the company because the visit to the bridge is not fully cleared. Someone shouts that a train is coming. The crew scrambles to move the bed and gear. The path to safety is narrow and clogged with equipment. The train closes the distance in seconds. The metal bed is still on the tracks when the locomotive reaches the bridge. The impact shreds the bed and sends pieces flying across the trestle. Workers are struck by debris and pushed toward the edge. Sarah Jones is hit and thrown. She does not survive. Several others are injured. Emergency services reach the scene from the riverbank and nearby roads. News of the set accident spreads fast through the film world. Investigators from local law enforcement and the rail company review emails, call sheets, and permits. They confirm that the crew did not have proper clearance to be on the bridge at that time. Director Randall Miller later pleads guilty to charges that include involuntary manslaughter and criminal trespass. He serves part of a prison sentence and accepts conditions that affect future directing work. The movie itself is never completed. The Day on the Bridge stands as its final chapter. Rust Church Set Shooting. The small church set at Bonanza Creek Ranch in New Mexico looks calm on screen. Inside the walls, the crew of the Western film Rust is under pressure. On the 21st of October, 2021, they prepare to rehearse a scene that uses a period revolver as a prop. Alec Baldwin is both star and producer. In this scene, his character sits in a church pew and draws a Colt .45-style revolver from his coat. The camera will be close, so the gun has to point toward the lens. Around him are cinematographer Helena Hutchins, director Joel Souza, and a few other crew members. The weapon is supposed to be cold, a production term for a gun with no live rounds. The armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, and the assistant director, Dave Halls, are part of the chain that handles the firearm. Unknown to them, a live cartridge has entered the mix. Live ammunition should never be present on a set. Later investigations will find some in the gun belt and in the box of rounds. During the rehearsal, Baldwin practices drawing the revolver and aiming it toward the camera setup. There is no plan to fire a blank at that moment, but the hammer is pulled back. Accounts differ on the exact trigger motion, yet the result is clear. The gun discharges. One round leaves the barrel. It passes through Hutchins and continues into Souza. People in the church first think it might be a misfire with a blank. When Hutchins collapses, the mood shifts to panic. Crew members call 911. Medics and a helicopter arrive. She is flown to a hospital in Albuquerque, where she dies from her injuries. Souza is treated and survives. Law enforcement locks down the set. Deputies recover the gun, the rounds, and video from the day. Over the next months, reports describe poor safety meetings, crew complaints, and weapons handled without strict control. The presence of live rounds becomes the central issue. Prosecutors bring criminal charges. Armorer Hannah Gutierrez Reed is later convicted of involuntary manslaughter and receives a prison sentence. Charges against Baldwin move through several filings and are eventually dropped. Civil lawsuits by Hutchins's family and crew members lead to settlements. Rust later resumes and finishes shooting in a different location with new safety rules and new personnel. Not every lie in Hollywood was whispered. Some were typed, notarized, and filed. These death certificates don't just record a date, they reveal everything no one dared say out loud. The heart failure wasn't natural. Jean Harlow was one of MGM's biggest stars in the 1930s, but her death certificate left more questions than answers. It said acute nephritis, a vague term for kidney failure. What it didn't say was how fast she declined and how badly things were handled behind the scenes. She collapsed on set in May 1937. At first, doctors blamed it on the flu. Then it was gallbladder trouble. She was swollen, couldn't keep food down, and her breath smelled like ammonia, an obvious sign of kidney issues. Still, no one got her to a specialist. MGM reportedly didn't want bad press. They downplayed her condition. By the time she was finally hospitalized, it was too late. Her kidneys were shutting down and fluid was flooding her lungs. She passed away just days later. The official record listed heart failure and uremia caused by nephritis, but experts later said her symptoms fit a treatable infection. She didn't need to die at 26. Stomach lined with acid burns. Thelma Todd was found slumped in her car, parked inside a garage near Pacific Palisades. The official cause: carbon monoxide poisoning. But the death certificate included something the headlines missed: damage to her stomach lining from acid exposure. Todd had spent the weekend partying. Witnesses said she seemed fine when she left, but hours later, her body was discovered. The garage belonged to her ex's wife, which fueled rumors. Some suspected foul play. Others pointed to accidental death after falling asleep with the engine running. No alcohol was found in her system, no bruises, just the gas and the acid. The certificate listed accidental death, but multiple doctors questioned why a healthy woman would sit in a running car, fully dressed, in freezing weather. And where did the acid come from? Bruising hours before overdose. Carol Landis was found unresponsive in her Brentwood home. The cause on the certificate: overdose. But the full report noted something unusual: faint bruising on both wrists and upper arms. No one could explain it. She had just spent the evening with actor Rex Harrison, who was married at the time. Landis reportedly begged him not to leave her. After he went home, she wrote several notes, only one of which made it to police. The others disappeared. The official story said she took sleeping pills late that night, but her certificate recorded lividity and rigor that didn't match the timeline. Some believe Harrison waited hours before calling for help. The bruises weren't deep, but they were fresh. The coroner couldn't say if they were defensive or accidental. Either way, they weren't consistent with someone just lying down and going to sleep. Liver weighed almost double. Ernie Kovacs died in a car crash. He lost control of his Chevy Corvair in the rain and slammed into a utility pole. The crash was instant, but his death certificate included something unrelated to the accident. His liver was massively enlarged, nearly double the normal size. The report listed cirrhosis suspected, which suggested years of heavy alcohol use. Friends later admitted he drank daily, often on set, but no one had talked about long-term damage until that form came out. His widow, Edie Adams, insisted alcohol played no part in the crash. Toxicology showed no drugs or alcohol in his system at the time of death, but the liver condition revealed a deeper issue. He had been hiding serious health problems, even from those closest to him. There was no foul play, no scandal, just a one-car wreck in the rain. But that one line on the certificate, chronic liver disease, noted, quietly changed how people saw him. 3rd degree, burns after crash. Jane Mansfield died instantly when her car slammed into the rear of a slowed tractor trailer outside New Orleans. The top of the vehicle was sheared off, killing all 3 adults in the front seat. Her children, asleep in the back, survived with minor injuries. Early news reports claimed she'd been decapitated. That wasn't true. The coroner later clarified the cause of death as crushed skull with severe brain trauma. Her head injuries were catastrophic but not surgical separation. A wig was found yards from the crash site, which likely fueled the false rumors. The press ran with it, but the official report stayed clear. She suffered multiple skull fractures, massive facial trauma, and instant loss of life. There were no burns, no fire, and no explosion. Just the full force of a steel truck hitting a low-sitting car at highway speed. The accident also prompted a nationwide push for truck underride guards, the safety bars now common on trailers. Morphine level off the charts? Judy Garland's death certificate listed barbiturate overdose, but the toxicology notes told a deeper story. The morphine level in her blood was higher than the known fatal range. Her body had built such a high tolerance, it blurred the line between survival and collapse. She had a long history of pill use, first given stimulants as a teenager by the studio. Over time, she needed more to sleep, more to wake up, more to get through a day. Her house in London was quiet that morning when her husband found her. Too quiet. The coroner said the overdose wasn't deliberate. Her liver and kidneys were already struggling, and the medication just pushed them over the edge. The certificate noted chronic malnutrition and organ stress, not surprising for someone who had lived on pills and cigarettes for years. There were no signs of trauma or foul play, just a woman whose system couldn't take it anymore. She was 4'11", barely 90 pounds, and her organs were giving out. Overdose from potent heroin batch. Janis Joplin was found face down on the floor of her Los Angeles hotel room, a cigarette still in her hand. The death certificate confirmed the cause, heroin overdose, with alcohol playing a supporting role. She was just 27. Another addition to the now famous 27 Club. There was no note, no staged farewell. Her friends said she seemed upbeat the night before, but they also said the heroin in circulation that week was unusually potent. Several others in her circle overdosed around the same time. Her room showed no signs of struggle. An open pack of cigarettes, change on the nightstand, and a cap from a syringe. That's it. No one heard a thing. By the time she was found, it was too late. Toxicology confirmed the drugs in her system were strong enough to stop her heart in minutes. Her liver and heart showed signs of long-term stress, likely from constant use and alcohol. There were rumors, theories, and fan speculation, but the paperwork was simple and final. Joplin didn't plan it. She didn't see it coming. The dose was just too much, and no one was there to catch it in time. Fatal brain swelling from painkiller. Bruce Lee collapsed suddenly while at a colleague's apartment in Hong Kong. The official cause of death, listed on his certificate, was cerebral edema, severe brain swelling. What triggered it was a common prescription drug, Equagesic, a mix of aspirin and a tranquilizer. Just 2 months earlier, Lee had collapsed in a recording studio. Doctors said it was likely heat stroke or a bad reaction to pain meds. He recovered fast, but on the day he died, he complained of a headache and took a single Equagesic tablet. He never woke up. The coroner found no alcohol or recreational drugs in his system, but the reaction to the medication was so extreme, it caused the brain to swell rapidly. His earlier episode should have been a warning. Instead, it was dismissed. Heart was nearly double-sized. Elvis Presley's death certificate said he died of a heart attack. What the final medical examiner's notes revealed was more severe. His heart weighed over 500 grams. That's nearly twice the normal size. Found face down in the bathroom at Graceland, Elvis had been battling multiple health issues. The certificate pointed to cardiac arrhythmia, but the details added up to something bigger. His body showed signs of chronic constipation, liver damage, and nerve issues. The heart enlargement stood out. It was proof his system had been under pressure for years. Toxicology found 14 different substances in his blood, all prescriptions, some meant for sleep, others for digestion or pain. He wasn't over the limit on any single drug, but together, they overwhelmed him. The heart simply couldn't keep up. The report also noted excessive fluid in his lungs and swelling in his colon, symptoms missed during routine checkups. He hadn't looked well in years, but few knew how far gone he was. Brain shrinking from alcohol use. Truman Capote's death certificate listed liver disease as the primary cause, but the final report also noted brain atrophy. His brain had started shrinking. That detail never made the headlines, but it explained everything. Capote had long battled addiction. Alcohol and pills were his daily routine in his final years. His speech had become slurred, his memory unreliable. By the time of his death, friends barely recognized him. He died in a guest bedroom at a friend's house in Los Angeles. The death certificate cited liver failure complicated by phlebitis and multiple drug intoxication. But the coroner included a quiet note, signs of central nervous system decline consistent with long-term substance use. In plain terms, his brain was deteriorating. There was no single overdose, no drama, just a body shutting down piece by piece. The shrinking brain explained his erratic behavior, confusion, and emotional swings. It was the kind of detail most people miss, but it said everything about what those last years were really like. Blunt trauma before drowning. Carol Wayne was best known for her bubbly roles on late-night television. She vanished during a trip to Mexico. Days later, her body was found face down in shallow water. The death certificate said probable drowning, but the autopsy listed something else: blunt trauma to the head and abdomen. She had been vacationing with a man she'd argued with earlier that week. According to him, she went for a walk alone and never came back. But the coroner noted bruises inconsistent with a fall or accidental slip. No alcohol or drugs were found in her system. The Mexican authorities closed the case quickly. No foul play was listed, no follow-up was done. The report left open the possibility of an accident, but the injuries raised doubts. Her passport, jewelry, and luggage were all still in the hotel. The certificate didn't tell the full story, but it showed more than what the press reported at the time. Survived, but not really. Dominique Dunn was in a coma for 5 days. That part's rarely mentioned. The coroner's report confirmed she had brain activity at first. Machines kept her breathing while her family waited. Her certificate lists the final cause, traumatic asphyxia, but the timeline made it more tragic. She had been attacked in her driveway by her ex-boyfriend. Neighbors heard her scream. By the time paramedics arrived, she had lost consciousness. But she didn't die on the spot. She lingered, and the hospital documented it: all seizures, swelling, brain hemorrhage. Her injuries were brutal. The autopsy noted fractures around the neck and deep bruising. But the certificate emphasized something else: respiratory arrest due to external pressure. Clinical, but clear. Her family eventually removed life support. That's when the certificate was finalized. The delay made headlines, but the official record captured the quiet suffering in between. Unusual toxicology. No clear answers. David Carradine was found in a Bangkok hotel closet, partially suspended by cords. The death certificate listed asphyxiation. The circumstances were unusual, and the official investigation left more questions than clarity. There were no signs of forced entry, no alcohol or illegal drugs in his system. Thai authorities ruled it an accident. The exact mechanism wasn't publicly detailed, and no charges were filed. Some reports suggested the manner of death was self-inflicted, but the family disputed those claims. The LAPD opened a review at the family's request, though they had no authority abroad. Carradine's family ordered a private autopsy in the U.S., but the results were never released in full. There were rumors about chemical traces and missed forensic details, but no confirmed evidence was made public. Carradine had a long acting career and was in Bangkok filming a new movie. He'd last been seen the night before at dinner with producers. Lethal mix of prescribed sedatives. Heath Ledger was found face down in bed at his New York apartment. The death certificate listed acute intoxication from a mix of prescription medications. None were illegal, but together, they slowed his body down until it couldn't recover. Toxicology showed 6 medications in his system: 2 painkillers, 2 anti-anxiety drugs, a sleeping aid, and an antihistamine. Each drug was within legal limits, but the combination was lethal. The sedatives depressed his breathing, leading to oxygen loss and eventual heart failure. There were no signs of trauma, and no note was left behind. His house was quiet, his bed undisturbed. He had been battling insomnia and anxiety for months. Doctors had prescribed the drugs separately, but no one tracked how they would interact in his body. The coroner ruled the death accidental. He didn't take too much of one thing, he took just enough of everything to make recovery impossible. His breathing slowed while he slept, and no one noticed until it was too late. Organs too decayed to test. Brittany Murphy's death was ruled as pneumonia with secondary anemia and multiple drug intoxication, but the report included a line that raised eyebrows. Several of her organs were too decayed to test properly. That wasn't due to delay. It happened fast. Within hours of death, she collapsed in her bathroom and was pronounced dead at the hospital. Her husband claimed she had flu-like symptoms for days. The coroner found dozens of medications in her system, mostly over-the-counter drugs. No illegal substances, no high-dose narcotics. What shocked investigators wasn't the toxicology, it was the rapid breakdown of tissue. Her organs had started to rot unusually fast. That led to speculation about mold in her home or environmental toxins. Nothing conclusive was ever found. Her father later called for further testing. The LA County coroner said no foul play was involved. Still, the organ decay made it difficult to get a clear answer. When her husband died just 5 months later under similar conditions, the questions grew. The report stayed the same, natural causes, but the body had deteriorated so quickly that some answers died with her. Severe nasal collapse noted. Michael Jackson's death certificate cited acute propofol intoxication, but deeper in the autopsy were findings related to years of surgeries, most notably severe nasal collapse. The structure of his nose had weakened to the point that breathing through it was limited. One nostril was nearly closed off. His personal doctor had administered the surgical anesthetic to help him sleep. Combined with other sedatives, it stopped his breathing. But the report also included physical signs of long-term strain, scarring from multiple operations, adhesive residue from prosthetic support, and thinning cartilage. These weren't the cause of death, but they helped explain his overall condition. His lungs were inflamed, his skin showed signs of vitiligo, and his weight had dropped below 140 pounds. The nasal collapse was one of many stress points his body had endured quietly for years. Jackson's team tried to control the narrative, but the certificate listed not only the overdose, but also contributing conditions: chronic insomnia, multiple medical dependencies, and respiratory restriction from past surgeries. Prescription bottles with labels removed. Whitney Houston was found unresponsive in a Beverly Hilton bathtub. Her death certificate listed drowning, with heart disease and drug use as contributing factors. But the investigators' notes included a strange detail. Several pill bottles in her room had missing or scratched-off labels. The coroner found a mix of prescription medications, anxiety pills, muscle relaxers, and antihistamines. None were in illegal quantities. But the altered bottle suggested someone didn't want the exact sources identified. That part was never explained. Toxicology showed she had used cocaine recently, but the levels weren't considered fatal. What likely happened was a sudden cardiac event, followed by unconsciousness and slipping beneath the water. The bathwater was shallow, but she never came up. Her body also had minor abrasions on her forehead, nose, and upper lip. The report said they may have come from contact with the tub during the fall. The combination of prescription drugs and a weakened heart proved too much, but the missing labels added a layer of mystery: advanced decay hours after death. Philip Seymour Hoffman was found in his New York apartment with a syringe still in his arm. The death certificate cited acute mixed drug intoxication. But the medical notes described something surprising. His body showed signs of advanced decomposition far earlier than expected. The coroner noted full postmortem lividity, body stiffness, and skin changes that usually take longer to appear. It suggested he had been gone for many hours before discovery, maybe even the entire night. Inside his apartment, police found nearly 70 bags of heroin, many unopened. Several prescription drugs were also on the scene. The combination had overwhelmed his nervous system quickly, but the state of his body hinted that no one had checked on him for some time. Friends thought he'd been clean. He had just finished rehab. The advanced decay made the timeline difficult to piece together. No one heard anything. No neighbors reported noise. The scene was silent and stayed that way for hours. Chest burns from emergency shocks. Carrie Fisher's death certificate listed sleep apnea and other undetermined factors. But the full report revealed burn marks across her chest, residue from emergency defibrillator paddles used mid-flight. Fisher had gone into cardiac arrest on a plane from London to Los Angeles. Passengers reported she stopped breathing just before landing. Paramedics rushed on board and began CPR immediately. The burns came from repeated shocks to restart her heart. They didn't work. Toxicology later found multiple substances in her system. The mix wasn't high enough to name a single cause. The coroner wrote that while drug use likely contributed, the exact trigger couldn't be confirmed. What stood out were the efforts to save her. The burns were deep enough to be noted in the report, showing how hard responders tried. She was on a ventilator for days before she passed. The official file didn't blame the substances alone. It pointed to long-standing health problems, sleep apnea, and a weakened heart. Stroke-struck hours after collapse. Debbie Reynolds passed away just one day after her daughter, Carrie Fisher. Her death certificate listed intracerebral hemorrhage, a massive stroke caused by bleeding in the brain. It was sudden, and it hit hard. She collapsed at her son Todd's home while discussing funeral arrangements for Carrie. Paramedics arrived quickly, but her condition was already deteriorating. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors couldn't reverse the damage. Though no autopsy was publicly released, it was confirmed that she had a history of high blood pressure, a major risk factor for strokes in older adults. She had no recent major illnesses, and her death caught many by surprise. Some sources mentioned possible complications during the collapse, including breathing difficulties. But the cause was clear: a catastrophic brain event brought on by long-term vascular strain and possibly worsened by the emotional stress of losing her daughter. The timing was heartbreaking. 2 icons, gone within 36 hours. Her death certificate made no mention of grief, but everyone close to her believed it played a role. Most people never see a celebrity death certificate, but They're public, and when you read them closely, you start asking new questions. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are the facts everyone skipped while chasing the headlines. Fatty Arbuckle's quiet cardiac collapse. He was once the highest-paid actor in Hollywood. By 1921, that was over. 3 manslaughter trials destroyed his career. Though he was cleared of all charges, his name never recovered. He kept working behind the scenes, but the damage was done. 10 years later, he died in his sleep at 46. The death certificate listed myocardial infarction, a heart attack, but deeper reports show his heart had been struggling for years. Arbuckle was a heavy drinker, not just socially. During Prohibition, he still found bootleg liquor, and it took a toll. Friends said he'd gained weight again and was complaining of chest pain in the weeks before he died. He was in New York when it happened. The date was the 29th of June, 1933. The day before, Warner Brothers had just signed him to a new contract. For the first time in years, he was going to star in front of the camera again. He celebrated that night with friends, said he felt great, went to bed, never woke up. Doctors who examined him found that the heart's left artery had ruptured. His blood pressure was dangerously high. The coroner noted that Arbuckle's esophagus also showed signs of long-term strain, likely from chronic acid reflux or vomiting, both known symptoms tied to years of alcohol abuse and stress. The stomach lining was inflamed. The press treated it as a comeback story cut short, but Arbuckle's death certificate showed this was a slow burn, the kind that builds quietly, unnoticed, until it wins. His wife, Addie, told reporters he was finally at peace. He died happy, she said. There was no funeral spectacle. He was cremated at Forest Lawn with only a small group in attendance. His ashes weren't interred until much later. Peg Entwistle's delayed impact discovery. She had 1 film credit, but her name became forever tied to the Hollywood sign. On the 18th of September, 1932, a hiker found her body below the H, along with her purse, shoes, and a note. The story was front-page news. A rising actress, dead at 24. But the coroner's report revealed something most people didn't know. Entwistle didn't die instantly from the fall. Her death certificate, filed by the L.A. County coroner, listed multiple fractures of the pelvis, spine, and skull. But in the notes, the examiner described signs of internal trauma inconsistent with a clean break. Her lungs had filled with fluid, and there was bruising that suggested her heart continued beating after impact. It meant she likely survived for several minutes, possibly even longer, after landing in the brush below the letter. There were also signs of movement. One shoe had been kicked off a short distance from her body. Her handbag was still clasped shut. A trail of flattened grass, stretching about 10 feet, was found beside her. No dragging, no blood trail, just evidence that she might have shifted or rolled before losing consciousness. The note, found inside her purse, was short. "I'm afraid I'm a coward. I'm sorry for everything." But the real shock came days later. Her uncle, who had raised her, received a letter from RKO Pictures. Peg had just been offered a lead role in a new film. It had been mailed before she died. Her death certificate was filed under her full name, Millicent Lillian Entwistle. Her body was cremated and sent back to Ohio, where her father was buried. Lupe Velez's report disputed press accounts. She was one of the first Mexican stars in Hollywood. She was bold, outspoken, and a comedy icon in the 1930s. But by the mid-1940s, her career had cooled. On the 13th of December, 1944, she was found dead in her Beverly Hills home. Newspapers said she took sleeping pills and died peacefully in bed, but the coroner's findings told a different story. Her official death certificate listed the cause as seconal poisoning, but she wasn't in bed. She was found face down near the toilet in her bathroom. Her maid discovered her the next morning with the room in disarray. That detail was left out of early reports to preserve her image. The autopsy confirmed a large amount of seconal in her bloodstream, enough to be fatal. But there was another detail, signs of vomiting. Her lungs showed fluid consistent with inhalation of stomach contents. The coroner noted that she had likely become sick shortly after taking the pills and collapsed while trying to reach the bathroom. There was also a strong scent of perfume and makeup freshly applied. Her hair had been carefully styled. She had written a note addressed to her lover Harold Ramond, saying she was too sad to go on. The note was signed and dated. What made it worse was the press spin. Gossip columnists painted a romantic, almost glamorous version of events. Some stories claimed she had planned the entire thing for dramatic effect. Others invented myths, like her being found on satin sheets surrounded by candles. None of that was true. The coroner's report cut through the noise. She had acted alone, but it hadn't gone as planned. The report even noted the bruises on her shins and knees, likely from hitting the tile floor during the collapse. That part never made it to print. She was 36. Her final scene wasn't scripted, and her death certificate recorded what Hollywood wouldn't say. She died trying to make it look perfect. It wasn't. Albert Decker's complex scene ruled accidental. He was a seasoned actor, working in film, stage, and politics. Known for villain roles in the 1940s and 50s, he stepped back from acting later in life. On May 5, 1968, he was found dead in his Hollywood Hills home. The scene was so bizarre, police suspected foul play, but the death certificate told a different story. He was discovered by his fiancée, who forced open the bathroom door after not hearing from him for several days. He was found in the tub, unclothed, with accessories that suggested deliberate staging. A cord was secured to the shower rod, and his wrists and ankles had light bindings. He was wearing sunglasses, and a cloth had been placed over his mouth. Investigators also noted markings on his body, written in red lipstick, consisting of scattered phrases and symbols. Despite how it looked, the Los Angeles County coroner found no signs of a struggle, no bruises that would suggest restraint, no evidence anyone else had been in the apartment. The autopsy revealed death by asphyxiation due to partial hanging. It was ruled accidental. Toxicology came back clean. No alcohol, no drugs. The knot was tied in a way that allowed him to slip in and out of it himself. Investigators determined he had likely lost consciousness while experimenting with pressure on the neck, an activity not uncommon, though rarely discussed. Decker's belongings were untouched. Cash, jewelry, and personal effects remained in plain sight. His fiancée told police he had done this kind of thing before, though never to this extent. She hadn't thought much of it until he stopped returning her calls. Decker's body was cremated, and no public service was held. His name faded from headlines quickly, but for years, his death was used as tabloid fodder. Dorothy Dandridge's fractured foot overlooked. She broke barriers. She was the first black woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar, but Hollywood didn't give her much after that. By the 1960s, roles had dried up, and money was tight. On the 8th of September, 1965, she was found dead in her apartment in West Hollywood. She was 42. The death certificate listed acute drug intoxication due to an overdose of Twinyl, a sedative. It had been prescribed. Early reports called it accidental. Some quietly speculated it was intentional, but the autopsy raised quiet questions. For one, there was no note, no high alcohol level. Her doctor had prescribed the drug for anxiety and insomnia, but she hadn't taken a massive amount, just enough to affect her central nervous system. The medical examiner noted a likely interaction with her existing health conditions. Her liver showed signs of long-term strain. The overlooked detail: her right foot was broken, a fresh fracture, no cast. The coroner's notes described it as a recent traumatic injury. The bruising suggested it happened within 48 hours of death. She had canceled a performance in Seattle just days before, claiming illness. Friends said she'd been limping. The apartment was in order. Her manager discovered her body on the bathroom floor after she missed a scheduled phone call. She was wearing a robe. The scene was clean, quiet. Her death was ruled accidental, but the foot injury stayed a loose end. It was logged in the final report, but left out of most press coverage. Just one more detail that didn't fit the headlines. Dandridge was cremated and interred at Forest Lawn, Inger Stevens's carpet scratch mark. She was a rising star in the 1960s. Known for her work in The Farmer's Daughter and several dramatic films, she had just started making a comeback. On the 30th of April, 1970, she collapsed in the kitchen of her Hollywood Hills home. Her roommate found her early that morning. She was rushed to the hospital but pronounced dead shortly after arrival. She was 35. The official cause of death was listed on the certificate as acute barbiturate poisoning. The coroner ruled it an accidental overdose, but the full report hinted that the end wasn't immediate. Toxicology confirmed a lethal level of barbiturates in her blood. Not enough for a quick collapse, though. Based on absorption rates, the examiner estimated she had been conscious for some time after taking the pills. Her stomach showed signs of digestion, and there was discoloration on her fingers and knees, suggesting she had crawled after losing balance. The most chilling detail was found in the living room carpet. The coroner's notes described linear fiber pulls near the body, tiny thread marks consistent with dragging or clutching. Her nails were worn. It looked like she had tried to pull herself across the floor, possibly for help, possibly toward the phone. There were no signs of trauma, forced entry, or violence. Her roommate told police she hadn't seemed depressed and had been planning a trip for the following week. They had dinner the night before, and nothing seemed unusual. But Stevens had a history of taking sleeping pills, and combining prescriptions may have tipped the balance. She also kept her private life extremely quiet. It wasn't until after her death that the public learned she had secretly married Ike Jones, a black film producer. At the time, interracial marriages in Hollywood were career-ending. The marriage certificate had been filed in secret in 1961. They'd lived apart to avoid scrutiny. Inger Stevens was cremated, and no autopsy photos were released. Her death didn't spark a scandal, but the quiet facts in her coroner's report told a different story. One of a woman who didn't fade away peacefully, but tried to fight for just a few more minutes. Sal Mineo's defensive wounds. He was a teen idol in the 1950s. He earned an Oscar nomination for Rebel Without a Cause and had a promising future. By the mid-1970s, he was rebuilding his career, taking on stage roles, and living quietly in West Hollywood. On the 12th of February, 1976, he was attacked outside his apartment after rehearsal. He was 37. The death certificate listed stab wound to the chest. He died within minutes, but the autopsy revealed more than just a fatal injury. Mineo had several cuts on his hands and forearms. The coroner marked them as defensive wounds. He had fought back. The attack happened fast. Witnesses heard shouting and found him collapsed in the carport, bleeding heavily. He had one major wound to the heart, but it was the smaller cuts that told the story. The report noted that the fatal injury punctured the aorta, causing rapid internal bleeding. He was conscious for a short time, not long enough for help to arrive. Nothing was stolen. His wallet and watch were still on him. That led to early speculation that it might have been a targeted attack. But within a year, police arrested a man named Lionel Ray Williams, a local with a string of robberies in the area. He denied involvement. Years later, he was convicted based on witness testimony, though no weapon was ever found. Mineo's body showed no signs of drug or alcohol use. He had spent the evening running lines at a local theater, clean clothes, no signs of a struggle in his apartment. Just a quick, brutal encounter steps from his door. He was buried at Gate of Heaven Cemetery in New York. His mother requested privacy, and the case faded from national headlines. But the death certificate recorded what mattered most: a single fatal wound, multiple attempts to defend himself, and a life cut short not by scandal, but by a random, senseless act of violence. Charles Boyer's coordinated overdose. He had one of the smoothest voices in Hollywood. Known for Gaslight and a string of romantic dramas, he built a long, steady career. But behind the scenes, he was devoted to his wife, actress Pat Patterson. When she died of cancer in August 1978, Boyer didn't wait long to follow her. He was 78. On the 26th of August, 2 days after his wife's passing, Boyer died in Phoenix, Arizona. The death certificate listed intentional overdose of Seconal. The coroner classified it as intentional, but it wasn't impulsive. The report pointed to careful preparation. There were 4 types of barbiturates in his system. All were legally prescribed. None were taken in excess individually, but together they slowed his heart to a stop. The toxicologist noted the combination had been taken in staggered doses over several hours. A will had been signed the day before. Bank accounts were in order. A note was left, short and direct. It stated his grief and his desire to be with her. There was no mention of pain, illness, or confusion, no sign of outside influence. It was a quiet decision from a man who had lost the person he built his life around. He was found in bed at a friend's home. His son and close friends were notified after the police confirmed the scene. Boyer had told no one in advance. His final hours were spent alone. The coroner's report showed no evidence of long-term substance misuse. His liver, kidneys, and heart were in good condition for his age. That fact confirmed the intent. He wasn't failing. He simply didn't want to live without her. The funeral was private. His ashes were interred next to his wife in Dallas. The news reached headlines briefly, mostly overseas. In France, he was mourned as a national treasure. In Hollywood, the story was more subdued. Dana Plato's delay in help. She became famous overnight playing Kimberly Drummond on Different Strokes, but fame didn't last. By the late 1990s, she was living in an RV with her fiancé, doing radio appearances and trying to revive her image. On May 8, 1999, one day after a live interview defending her sobriety, she was found dead in her motorhome in Moore, Oklahoma. She was 34. The death certificate listed fatal overdose of Lortab and Soma. Both were legally prescribed. Lortab for pain, Soma as a muscle relaxant. The medical examiner ruled it accidental, but the coroner's report pointed out that the dose of each medication was within the prescribed limit. It was the combination that caused her breathing to slow and eventually stop. She died sometime in the afternoon. Her fiancé told investigators she had gone to lie down and didn't wake up. He waited several hours before calling emergency services. The delay was noted in the police report, but no charges were filed. There was no sign of struggle, trauma, or illegal substances. Toxicology results came back clean aside from the 2 medications. No alcohol, no street drugs. Her liver showed early signs of damage, likely from years of substance use, but not severe enough to be fatal on its own. The medical examiner noted the absence of food in her stomach, which may have caused the pills to hit harder and faster. She had just spoken publicly about trying to get better. The day before, she appeared upbeat, but according to the report, she hadn't taken the medications under supervision. No pill count was done. No one checked on her for hours. Her body was cremated. No autopsy photos were released. Her son, Tyler, was 14 at the time. Years later, he would die on the same day, May 8. David Carradine's cause remains unclear. He made his name in the 1970s as the star of Kung Fu and later appeared in Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill films. He had a long, unpredictable career and an even stranger ending. On the 4th of June, 2009, Carradine was found dead in a Bangkok hotel room. He was 72. Initial reports called it intentional. That changed quickly. Thai authorities released the death certificate stating asphyxiation as the cause, but they didn't classify it as self-harm. The exact circumstances were labeled unusual, with no final ruling made at the time. The position of the body and the items found in the closet led to widespread speculation. Police said there were no signs of forced entry. Security footage showed no one entering or leaving his room, but investigators found physical evidence that suggested Carradine may have died from a risky form of accidental self-asphyxiation. The coroner in Thailand performed a full autopsy. Later, Carradine's family requested an independent pathologist in the U.S. to conduct a second review. That Dr. Michael Baden confirmed there was no sign of trauma or struggle, but the positioning and physical evidence pointed to an accident involving restricted airflow. The family pushed for further investigation. Carradine's ex-wives and children released statements asking for privacy but expressed doubt about the circumstances. Meanwhile, Thai police closed the case with no charges filed. The U.S. State Department reviewed the case and found no reason to intervene. The final U.S. death certificate repeated the cause as accidental asphyxiation. The exact method was not listed, in line with privacy standards. His remains were returned to Los Angeles and cremated. A quiet ceremony was held with family and a few close friends. Carradine's death made headlines for all the wrong reasons, but the official documents stayed neutral. No sensational claims, no conclusion beyond the physical facts, asphyxiation, no substances, no foul play, just a strange, solitary end to a career full of unpredictable turns. His death certificate didn't explain the why. It only recorded what could be proved. And for a man who built his legacy playing mystery-driven roles, that ending almost fit. Bela Lugosi, Dracula's final costume. Bela Lugosi spent his career haunted by Dracula, so much so that when he died in 1956, he was buried wearing the infamous cape. But that wasn't the strangest part of his death. The actor's cause of death was listed as a heart attack, technically coronary occlusion, at the age of 73. By that time, Hollywood had long since moved on from him. His health had been declining for years. worsened by chronic pain and an addiction to morphine and methadone. He died nearly penniless in a modest Los Angeles apartment. Despite once being a major horror star, the Dracula legend hadn't been kind to him in his later years. The roles dried up. The money disappeared. By the time of his death, he was more of a Hollywood relic than a legend. But the real horror began after he was gone. Lugosi never publicly stated he wanted to be buried in his Dracula costume, yet when the funeral was arranged, that's exactly what happened. His son, Bela Lugosi Jr., later insisted this wasn't his father's wish. It was a decision made by his ex-wife, Lillian, along with actor Vincent Price. The intention was to honor his most famous role, but did Lugosi himself ever want to spend eternity trapped in the cape that defined and cursed his career? That part remains murky. Then there was the issue of the funeral itself. Lugosi had no money left. He died in near destitution, living off Social Security and occasional film work when he could get it. He didn't even have enough funds to pay for his own burial. That's when a fellow horror icon stepped in. Peter Lorre, along with Vincent Price, covered the funeral costs to give their friend a proper send-off. There's even a legend that Lorre, upon seeing Lugosi in the open casket wearing the cape, leaned over to Vincent Price and whispered, "Do you think we should drive a stake through his heart just to be safe?" Jane Mansfield, the car wreck. June 29, 1967. A Buick Electra sped down a dark Louisiana highway, slicing through the humid night air. Inside sat Jane Mansfield, her attorney and rumored boyfriend Sam Brody, their driver, and 3 children, including 3-year-old Mariska Hargitay, nestled in the back seat. The group was en route from Biloxi, Mississippi, where Mansfield had performed at a nightclub, heading toward New Orleans for her next booking. But at approximately 2:25 a.m., the trip ended in one of Hollywood's most infamous car crashes. The Buick was traveling at high speed when it slammed into the back of a tractor-trailer that had slowed for a mosquito fogging truck. The impact was instant and catastrophic. The top of the car crumpled as it slid under the truck, shearing off the windshield and part of the roof. The first reports were gruesome. Word spread that Mansfield had been decapitated. While that wasn't exactly true, the truth wasn't much better. Her official autopsy listed the cause of death as crushed skull with avulsion of cranium and brain. Put simply, the force of the crash had violently scalped her, exposing her skull. Brain matter was found on the car's dashboard. The coroner noted she suffered crushed skull with separation at the temporal region, meaning her head had taken the full brunt of the impact. Death was immediate. Her attorney, Brody, and the driver, Ronnie Harrison, also died on impact. Amazingly, Mansfield's 3 children survived, shielded by the front seat. Mariska Hargitay, who would later become famous for her role in Law and Order, SVU, was left with a facial scar but no memory of the accident. Thelma Todd, poisoned in her own garage. On the morning of December 16, 1935, Thelma Todd's maid found her slumped in the driver's seat of her Lincoln convertible, parked inside her garage in Pacific Palisades. The 29-year-old actress, best known for her comedic roles alongside the Marx Brothers, was dead from carbon monoxide poisoning. But the details of her final night didn't sit right with investigators or the public. The official cause of death? Accidental. The theory? She came home late from a party, too drunk to make it inside, and passed out in her car while the engine ran. But that explanation ignored several red flags. For starters, Todd's body didn't look like she had simply fallen asleep. She was still wearing her evening gown, makeup intact, and had fresh bruises on her throat. Blood was found on her lips and inside her mouth, suggesting she had suffered some kind of trauma before she died. Even stranger, her car keys weren't in the ignition. They were tucked inside her purse. If she had locked herself inside the garage, how did the keys end up there? Then there was the matter of her powerful enemies. Todd owned Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe, a successful restaurant in Malibu. According to rumors, mobster Lucky Luciano pressured her to let him run an illegal gambling operation out of her restaurant. She refused. A few days later, she was dead. The night before she died, Todd attended a party at the Trocadero nightclub. She seemed in good spirits, even joking with friends about recent death threats she had received. She left the club around 2 a.m., reportedly driven home by her chauffeur, but instead of entering her house, she somehow ended up in the garage of her ex-husband, Pat DiCicco, a known mob associate, where she died. The autopsy confirmed carbon monoxide poisoning but found no alcohol in her system, contradicting the theory that she had passed out drunk. There were no signs of a struggle, yet the bruises on her body raised suspicions. Some believed she was forced into the garage and locked inside, left to suffocate. Others suspected she had been murdered elsewhere, and the scene was staged. Despite the inconsistencies, the case was closed. No one was ever charged. James Dean. The autopsy proved no instant death. He wasn't just a Hollywood actor. He was an icon of rebellion, speed, and recklessness. But on September 30th, 1955, the ride ended when his Porsche 550 Spider, nicknamed the Little Bastard, collided with another vehicle at the intersection of Route 466, now State Route 46, and Route 41 in Cholame, California. The official cause of death: multiple traumatic injuries. The autopsy told a far grimmer story. Dean was behind the wheel, his passenger and mechanic, Rolf Wutherich, in the seat next to him. A Ford Tudor, driven by 23-year-old Donald Turnipseed, turned in front of them. Dean, going roughly 85 miles per hour, had no time to react. The impact crushed the tiny Porsche, hurling Dean's body halfway out of the wreckage. The autopsy report detailed the extensive damage: a fractured skull, broken neck, crushed ribs, and massive internal injuries. His left foot was nearly severed, but the most unsettling detail: he wasn't immediately dead. Witnesses, including a passing nurse, reported that he still had a faint pulse when first responders arrived. The coroner later confirmed that Dean likely suffered for a brief period before succumbing to internal hemorrhaging caused by a ruptured aorta. Wutherich, meanwhile, was thrown from the car and survived, only to live with severe injuries and PTSD for the rest of his life. Dean's death certificate listed his time of death as 5:59 p.m. His body was so badly mangled that the funeral required a closed casket. Marilyn Monroe, the overdose. Official cause of death confirmed a lethal dose of barbiturates, Nembutal, and chloral hydrate. But here's the thing: her stomach was empty. No traces of capsule residue, no sign of her swallowing over 40 pills. Just a body, face down, bruised, and a housekeeper who changed her story multiple times. The timeline was a mess. Monroe's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, reportedly broke into her room at 3:30 a.m. and found her dead. But early accounts said she was still alive when paramedics arrived. And her housekeeper? Eunice Murray, the last person to see Monroe alive, initially claimed she checked on her around midnight and found nothing unusual. Then, in a later interview, she slipped up saying, "Oh, why do I have to keep covering this up?" Then there were the missing phone records. Monroe was reportedly on the phone for hours that night. One call to actor Peter Lawford, who later said she sounded drugged and kept repeating, "Say goodbye to Pat, say goodbye to Jack, Jack," as in John F. Kennedy. Those records vanished. And let's talk about her organs, because they also disappeared. Standard autopsy procedure required tissue samples to be sent to labs for further analysis. But her vital organs, including the stomach, never returned. Without them, it was impossible to determine if the drugs were ingested or introduced another way, which brings us to the most unsettling detail. Toxicology confirmed a fatal dose of barbiturates, but there was no water in her stomach, making it unlikely she swallowed dozens of pills. No needle marks were recorded on her body, dismissing the injection theory. But her colon showed signs of irritation, leading some experts to believe the drugs were administered via enema. It was a known practice for fast absorption, especially in cases where a person was too sedated to swallow. And if she didn't administer it herself? Well, that's the question no one could or would answer.